Good morning. Today is Sunday. It is Ches Teves, Tovshin Ayin Tes. We are in Teres Menachem Sefer Mamar Tovshin Yud Gimel in the Mamar of Shabbos Pasha Shlach. Vayihiyu Bnei Yisroel Bamidbar. We are on page Kuf Ayin Tes. We started Ois Dalid, and we will carry on. We're at the tail end of page Kuf Ayin Tes. 2 lines from the bottom. The line starts with Mislapshim. We're at the full stop by the words Ukmaikein. In brief, just to pick up the thread, the Rebbe brought, this is a Maimon on the Pasuk, which in Pasha Shlach and Bamidbar, which talks about the person who is gathering sticks on Shabbos. Mekoishesh Eitzim. There are 2 definitions, 2 interpretations to this Mekoishesh Eitzim idea. One is the simple definition, which means you gathered wood on Shabbos. Then there is the Pirush of the Zohar, definition of the Zohar. Mekoishesh is from the expression of Hekesh, comparing. He was comparing trees. Which trees was he comparing? He was comparing the Eitz HaChaim and the Eitz HaDaas, the tree of life and the tree of knowledge that we know about from the Garden of Eden, to know which one is greater. So the Rebbe asked, what does that mean? What was he comparing to know which one is greater? Question number 1. And then he asked why was it being Shabbos and so on and so forth. But that was the general idea. What's the idea of this Mekoshesh Eitzim? So the Rebbe started by explaining that there are 2 modes. To understand this, we first have to analyze what's the idea of Avodas Hashem. Because the tree of life and the tree of knowledge gives one the ability to discern between good and evil. And if that's the case, what was so terrible that this person, the Mekoshesh Eitzim, according to the Pirush of the Zohar, compared the tree of life to the tree of knowledge to know which one is greater? And also, what was the sin of Adam Rishon to eat? Why was it such a terrible sin for him to eat from the Eitz HaDaas, from the tree of knowledge? In fact, we would have thought that it would be desirable. The whole purpose of Avodas Hashem is to discern, of serving Hashem, is to discern between good and evil, to know what we should do, what we shouldn't do, between the good behavior and negative behavior. If the tree of knowledge can assist one in discerning between those 2, it would seem that should be desirable.
Why not?
So the Rebbe started explaining what's the whole idea of Avodas Hashem, serving Hashem. And he said there are 2 modes of serving Hashem. One is in a limited way, and one is in an unlimited way. And he went through these 2 modes in Maisa, in action, in ascending order from below to above. In Maisa, in action, in Dibur, in speech, in thought, in Midos, in the feelings of the heart, the emotions, in the Re'us, in the Moichin, the intellect, and then the Re'us of the Liber, the desire of the heart, the love and fear of Hashem, the love of Hashem that comes from the essence of the soul. In every one of these levels, from the lowest to the highest, from the very lowest to the most immanent, from the most primitive, the one that is most, the one that is most associated with the reality of the person, to the most sublime, like Re'us of the Liba, which is transcendent. In each one of these levels of serving Hashem, there is a limited way of serving Hashem and an unlimited way of serving Hashem. And the Rebbe explained that it's necessary to have, besides serving Hashem in a limited way, we need to have the unlimited mode of serving Hashem. Because otherwise, the limited aspect of that particular level could end up in undesirable places, in undesirable activities, undesirable areas, and so on and so forth. In this section, from Ois Dalet now, the Rebbe is explaining these 2 modes of limited and unlimited in Spheres. Until now, he explained it in Nefesh Adam, in man serving Hashem. Now he's explaining that...
You gave the details of each one and each one?
Yes. Yeah. We had 10 Shiur already. That's my way. Now he's explaining how this is reflected in the Spheres. In other words, why is it like that in man? Because that's the way it is in Spheres and the divine attributes above. That you also find these 2 aspects. There's a limited aspect and an unlimited aspect. So the Rebbe started explaining. Let's start from Dalet again. Page Kofayin Tes. Vayihiyu Bnei the 2 above mentioned modes, which we find in the general idea of man's serving Hashem. Why do these 2 modes exist Mitzat Shorsham. Mitzat Shorsham Sfiras Shalamayla. They are as a result of their source in the divine attributes above. Right? And he's also going to go from below to above. Just as he did in Avodas Hashem, he started from Maisa, from the lowest level of action, all the way to the Usa Deliber, the most sublime and transcendent. Here too, he's going to start from Malchus and work his way all the way up to the Eir and Sof Shalif Nat Tzimtzum, to God's divine light before the first contraction. The Spheres of Malchus, beginning with Malchus, the divine attribute of Malchus, Kivon Shates Spheres Diloyer, being that the 9 attributes of Malchus descend and clothe themselves in Biyah. In other words, Atzilus is still the domain of the Creator. Biyah, the domain of the created. In the previous Shiur, we discussed all this, why the 9 attributes of Malchus, meaning it's not only the last aspect of Malchus, but the whole of Malchus descends into Biyah, into the domain of the created. It's not possible to refer to it, the verse in Yeshaya which states, I shall not give my glory to another. Right? In Yeshaya it says, the Navi declares on behalf of Hashem, I shall not give my glory to another. Meaning to say that it remains, in the context of as it's being explained here, it remains in the domain of Kedusha. In the domain of the Creator. Kveidi, not Kedusha, not only Kedusha, but in the domain of the Creator. What is the domain of the Creator? Ukveidi, my glory. Who says that? Hashem. Where is that? That's in Atzilus. So being that Malchus descends into Biyah, into the domain of the created, we cannot say that I'm not going to give away my glory to another, right? Because the glory is being given away to another. To where? To Biyah. Sharei Adrab, on the contrary, Raglei Yerdis Mavis, her feet descend into death. That's a reference to Malchus of Atzilus, death referring to not only Biyah, but even lower. Right? What is Mavis? Death. That's a euphemism for what? It's a synonym for Klippa. So what's with Malchus? Vayihiyu. Shesfiras Malchus Atzma, first of all, Sfiras Malchus itself, Sheiches Libya, is associated with Biyah, with the domain of the created, till the lowest level of Asiyah. Shalachei Nikra, it's Adas Tevera. That's why Malchus is called the tree of knowledge. The tree of knowledge being a composite of good and bad. Why? Because Malchus descends into Biyah, into the domain of the created, even into the lowest levels. That is why the 9 attributes of Malchus descend and clothe themselves in the domains of B'riyat Asiyah. Not only that, but this mavis, to the extent that not only does it clothe itself in the domain of the created, which can be neutral, it even descends into the areas of death. What does that mean? It descends even into the aspects of the Ra, of the bad, the evil that exists in those realms. As we know that in Bria is Rubai Toiv Miyotera, in Bria it's mostly good and a minimum, a little bit of bad. In Yitzira it's balanced, Mechza, half and half. And in Asiyah it's Rubai Ra, mostly bad. So if Malchus clothes itself into Bria Yitzira Asiyah, it descends even into those areas to animate them.
I mean, more concealed than bad.
No, I'm talking about bad. That's the Alter Rebbe brings it in Tanya. Talking about Klippas. Talking about Klippa.
The Clippers, no.
Right? So what's the bottom line? So focusing on Malchus, there is an aspect of Malchus, just like he's spoken of Vedas Hashem. There is the limited and the unlimited. So we see Malchus is limited or deficient. Let's call it that way. In which sense? That it descends into areas of negativity, which is like mirroring the idea of the limited that he discussed in Avodas Hashem, in the lowest level. Malchus.
So Sephiroth aren't bad, as you're calling it, but it's like the environment is bad.
Correct. It descends into an environment and it animates it. Who gives the Bria, the creation? Creation is through Malchus. Malchus is Malchus. And creation is all the way through all the levels, all the way to the lowest level, including Klippa. Klippa is also created. As we learned in the Maimon Mitzvah Mishatishka Achamo Tov Shalom Ches. If you remember, in honor of the Rebbe's in Tovshin Ayin Ches, it was 40 years from the unfortunate events of Simchas Torah Tov Shalom Ches. Zois Chanukah, the Rebbe held the Suda Seidah and said a Maimer Mitzvah Mishatishka Chama. We then had a series, I think, of 5 shiurim, 3 shiurim, I think. A special, because all a special shiur, all the shuls were learning then this Maimer Mitzvah Mishatishka. So over there, the Rebbe discusses that even Klippa is created by Hashem. And what's the purpose? So, but that creation is through which Sphira? Through Malchus. So Malchus descends into the lowest levels. So Malchus has in it an aspect, those low levels, that's a limiting aspect, right? It limits Kedusha. It even opposes Kedusha. So he's talking about the aspect that in Spheres that he discussed before in Nefesh Adam. In Nefesh Adam you find the limited and the unlimited. In Malchus also you find, now he focuses on the limited. So Malchus is the lowest level. Now he goes to the next level, which is what? Zoh. We also find a deficiency or a limited aspect in it. In the 6 meters of Atzilus. Although Zoh is mostly what Chsadim, right? As it says in the Pasuk, he remembered this kindness, right? This is a Pasuk in Tehillim chapter 98. It says Zochar Chaslev B'naseh Bnei Yisroel. We say it in the Kabbalah Shabbos davening. This pasuk, this kapitel in Tehillim. Zochar Chaslev, he remembered his Chesed v'Manasseh and his faith leBeis Yisroel, right, to the house of Israel. In Chassidus, this is brought as a raya that Chesed is Zochar, because although the word Zochar over here is Zochar, he remembered. But it's the same letters as Zochar. So Zochar Chasle. Chesed is the idea of Zochar, male. What is Zoh? Zeir Ampin of Atzilus. If you talk about Zeir Ampin versus Malchus, the 6 midas versus Malchus, the 6 midas are the Mashpia, and Malchus is the Mekabel. So the 6 midas is Zochar, the male. Right? The giver. Malchus is the receiver. So too, in the Spheres itself, Zochar is the Mashpia, Chesed is the Mashpia, and Gvur is the Mekabel. Right? So the main sphira, it says in general, Chesed is Yoima de Ozilim Kuli Yomin, it says in the Zohar. Chesed is a sphira that is a day that goes with all days. We know that it says in the Pasuk, Ki Sheishes Yomim Osa Hashem Es Hashemayim Es Haaretz. Hashem created the world in 6 days, but it doesn't, linguistically, it should have said, grammatically, it should have said, in 6 days, Hashem created, it took 6 days for Hashem to create the world. Sheishes Yomim Asa means he made 6 days. Or the 6 days made. 6 days made as a Shemayim V'Sa'aretz. What does it mean 6 days made the heavens and the earth? The 6 days is a reference to the 6 midas. Sunday is Chesed, Friday is Malchus, is Yisod, and Shabbos is Malchus, of course. It was Menucha, right? Rest. So in other words, each day represents another sphira. So although Sunday is Chesed and Monday is Gvura, nevertheless, the Zohar says Chesed is a sphira that goes with all days. So even though Monday is Gvura, you still have Chesed accompanying it. That Chesed, the Hashpah, because Chesed denotes the Hashpah, the giving, that needs to be there every day. So on Sunday it's Chesed, full Chesed. On Monday it's Gvura, but how? Well, where's the Hashpah? Where's the giving, the flow? Where does that come from? From Chesed. But Gvura regulates it. Tuesday is Tiferes, and so on and so forth. So Chesed goes along with each Sphira. That's the point. So therefore, the dominant Sphira of the emotional attributes of Atzilus is what? Is Chesed. Chesed is, so therefore, Zoh, the 8 Ampin of Atzilus, the small parts of the small face, as it were, of Atzilus is what? Is mainly Chesed. What's the problem then? So if it's Chesed, he says like this. It's going to take us a few shurim to get through this ice, because the Rebbe packs in all the madrigas from Malchus all the way to the Eresav Shlifnei Tzimtzum in one page. But if you don't forget this point, what the Rebbe is trying to explain over here is that at every level you have a limited aspect, or an aspect that is not only in the domain of Kedusha, or there is a potential for the opposite of Kedusha, depending on which level. Malchus fully submerges itself into where? Into Biyah and even into Klippa. So too in Zoh, he says, what? It's the emotions, right? Chesed, mainly Chesed. So what he's going to go on to explain is this. I'll first say it Balpeh, orally, and then we can do it inside. There's what's known as what he calls chsodim hamegulim and chsodim hamechusim. Revealed chsodim and covered chsodim. Beware, this is not talking about chsodim hanestorim. Chsodim hanestorim, hidden chsodim, emanate from Keser, from beyond Chabad. We're not talking about that. We're talking about Chesed. We're talking about the emotions of Zoh. The emotional attributes of Zoh. Ze'er Ampin. But there is the way they are. Now, how do Midas come into being? How are Midas born? How are the emotional spheres of Atzilus born? So the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, Chabad nikru imois u'moker la midas ki ha-midas im tuldas Chabad. Chochma and Bina are the father and the mother, right? They're the Av ve'em. And the spheres, the emotional aspects of Chesed and so on and so forth, are the children, the offspring, Ben Ubas. Chesed and Gvura is called the son and the daughter, right? Now you have the Ben Ubas, meaning Chesed and Gvura, as they emanate from, which emanates from Chabad, from Chochma and Bina. As they are Chsodim HaMegulim, as they are already in a state of revealed Midas. But then you have them as they are Chsodim HaMechusim, as they are Midas, but enwrapped within Meichin, within the intellect. So they're already Midas. So in other words, you have like this. You have the intellect. And you have the intellect as it is a source for the Midas. So in other words, you have the Midas the way they are within their source, not yet born. Call it an embryo. Call it potential for birth. Call it whatever you want. Then you have as the Meichin, the intellect, gives birth to the Midas or to the emotional spheres. But you still, in the process of them being born, you have when they're completely independent already. So they were born from the Hizbonenus or from the Meichin, the Chochma Bina that existed before, but now that sort of, they're now two separate entities. But then you also have before that state, where it's already a full-blown midah, a full-blown emotional attribute. But the presence of the Meichin is overbearing, of the intellect is overbearing, so what you feel, what is felt very strongly is the Meichin. That's called chsodim hamechusim. Covered chsodim. Chsodim that are covered in what? The emotions that are covered with the intellect, by the intellect. So the point that he's making is like this. From chsodim hamegulim, from revealed chsodim.
It's like the potential. Is it?
No, it's already actual. Actual, but what's dominant is not the midah, but the intellect that brought it into being. So you still think about it in terms of a hizbonenus. You're thinking about a concept. So you have the excitement where, wow, yes, this is amazing. So there's when you say it's amazing and you already moved on from what brought you to that conclusion, or you're still within the process, you realize that there's something that moves you tremendously emotionally. But what's dominant and what's present is the meichin, is the intellect. What's the difference between the two? Just like in Malchus when he said Yeredes libya, it goes into bia and it descends even into ra. There is the focus of something other than godliness. There's a yesh, there's something out there. Not only a yesh, even a klipa which is opposing. So there's a focus on what? On the eye of another entity which is not Elokus, not Kedusha. So too over here, when we talk about Chsodim HaMegulim, revealed Chsodim, what's felt? The emotion. So what's the focus? The focus is on the eye. When you talk about the intellect, the emotion is tempered, if you will, because you're still lost and in awe of the intellect, the intellectual idea, or the meichin, that has brought you to that emotion. So therefore, in Chsodim HaMegulim, in revealed chsodim, when it's already a separate entity and removed and independent of the meichin, of the intellect, it's already more yeshes, so therefore more potential for what? For klipa. Whereas in chsodim hamechusim, being that it's protected, if you will, still by the intellect, there is no potential for what? For unika lachetzayin, for klipa, for seepage to those that are opposite of Kedusha. Let's see what it says inside.
So hold on, so there's a connection, quite a strong connection then between emotions and klipa.
Absolutely. Because the whole idea of yeshes, when there is as soon as there's when he's going to talk later about chochma and bina, even a chochma and bina, and then he's going to go even lifnei tzimtzum. Once you talk about the focus on the other, on the eye, on something that is an eye, there's already that potential. What's the whole point of the Rebbe's Maimer in B'yem Ashtei Yosef, that famous Maimer of Yudalef Nissen? where he brings that famous mashal, Chelki Hashem Amr Nafshi. It says, Yirmiyahu declares, my part is Hashem. He brings the famous mashal of the king that came into his, one of his provinces with all his ministers, and one person said, I want this minister, I'm going to become close to the other minister. And there was one wise man who said, I want the king. The kulam is chalf and the malkalim is chalf. They all change, the king doesn't. So the Rebbe asks, what's the great wisdom of the Bekeach? It's a simple concept. It's basic. If you have an option whether to become close to the minister or come close to the king, you have to be a fool not to choose the king. So the Rebbe explains that there's a fundamentally different approach necessary when becoming close to a minister, a host, or becoming close to the king. The hosts represents Giluyim. The Melech represents Etzem. Giluyim, it's me focused, it's ego focused. The focus is on me. Kirvas Elikim li toiv, the li. I. Etzem demands bittul, complete nullification if you want to be close to the king. The li has to lose itself. Right? So, the word of the Rebbe over there is that once you're focusing on Giluyim, in other words, you're focusing on yourself, you're a potential Levi Avodah Zarah. Because the Medrash of there concludes that so too the idolatrous nations of the world focused on the sun, on the moon, and worship idols, and you didn't focus on Hashem. What is the word? The Rebbe says it's at every level. Not only talking about Umas Ha'olam in general. As soon as you're focused on Giluyim, on the I, which just means what benefit it fires me. If the focus is on me, there's already a potential for Chitzonim. Even you're talking about Atzilus. What are we talking? We're talking about Chesed Atzilus over here, right? But if the focus, if it's Chasadim HaMegulim, if it's revealed, it means it's already removed from the Meichin, so it's already left that protective cocoon. There's already the discernible entity or being of the I, and that's already a potential for Chitzonim. What does the Alter Rebbe say in Tanya? Chochma of Atzilus. Why? Where does what's the dominant sphere of Atzilus? Chochma. You know, in the Shemus of Yudke, in the letters of Yudke Vavke, Yud is Chochma, the Hey is Bin, and Vav is the 6 Midas, and the other Hey is Malchus. That's Atzilus B'ri Yitzir Asiyah. So what's Atzilus in general? Over here he's going into nuances within Atzilus itself. But what is Atzilus? The dominant sphere of Atzilus is what? Is Chochma. Why? Because Atzilus is still the domain of the Creator. Elikus can only dwell and rest on something that's nullified to godliness. If there's some aspect of ego of an I, that's a contradiction that interferes with the revelation of Elikus. Right? So this is the thread. The point that Rebbe is going to go through all these madregas where you will find there's an aspect where it's outward focused or self-focused, and therefore you need the higher element of it. Like just like over here, you have Chsadim HaMegulim, you need to still have the Chsadim HaMechusim. Don't lose the connection to the Chsadim HaMechusim, because otherwise you can run into trouble. Right? You want to say something?
As soon as there's an I, you're talking about a relationship of I.
Correct.
So how do you get around that?
The Alter Rebbe says it's impossible. The Alter Rebbe
So
says,
what is this idea of
as much as you can.
I want the king. See, I want the king.
You could say, I want the king, or I could say, I want the king. You're saying the same thing, but what's the focus? The Rebbe is going to discuss it later on, actually. And people that are not at this madrega, as long as you know, let's put it this way, Harris, as long as you know that there is that higher level, that one has to lose himself in that higher level, and not lose the connection with the unlimited aspect, then the I is a different one. It's already, your I is tempered. The Alter Rebbe says in Tanya clearly that even a tzaddik gomer Eves
The I is desirable because Hashem created you.
It's not desire, it's the
He created
reality.
you. He created you as a separate entity.
But what Hashem
And
wants
you have
is
to recognize your separateness, which is your I.
correct.
And you use your I for Hashem, but the I has to be there.
The I has to be there, but with the knowledge, the I has to be there simply because if there's no I, there's no one to serve Hashem.
Correct. That's it.
Aber man darf wissen, dass der I ist nicht kein I.
That's a paradox.
Precisely. When will it really truly be Nisgala revealed in its full reality? Will be when Mashiach comes. That the I will reveal the Yeshus Atzmi, the true Yesh, which will be when Mashiach will come. That will be revealed. So we will understand and feel how the I that we feel is really not what I.
Aye.
But his I, the Yesh Amiti, the true Yesh. But as long as we know of these ideas and are aware of them, then that I is a different one. We don't. The idea is that I, that ego, should not lose focus. Sometimes you get so caught up in the I and what I'm doing that there's a disconnect. We learned about Oyer. Oyer always has to be connected. Dovuk B'Mayr always has to be connected to its source. So what happens is Rotzav V'Shoiv. It comes down. Hashem says, "I'm creating you, Oyer, in order for you to animate the world." So he comes down to the world. He says, "I don't belong here." So he goes back up. He says, I want to be connected to. I want to be here." Hashem says, "No, your whole existence is in order to animate. So go back down." Why is this dual process? Why not just make the Oyer that it should stay where it is? Because if it can only animate if it's connected to the source. That's the paradox. On the one hand, it has to be Dovuk B'Hamoyer. It has to be connected to the source. On the other hand, it has to clothe itself in the one below to give it life. If you would disconnect it from its source, it would not be able to give life anymore. It would lose its ability to give life. It would create such a yesh that would be completely devoid of what? Of Getlachkeit. So this is the friction and the struggle, right? The process, the Rotzav V'Shoiv, the to and the fro that keeps on going throughout, that keeps on existing throughout existence, through our Avodas Hashem. And the Rebbe is going to go on and explain all these two aspects later also in Meichin and then higher in Keser, etc., etc. Mitzvah Hashem, continue
tomorrow morning, no?
tomorrow morning.
He's going to explain this tomorrow morning.
Mitzvah Hashem. Have a wonderful day.